Welcome to NIA Tales. Continue to part 3. Please subscribe to my channel. The dining hall was cathedral of light and silence. Tall windows framed the garden beyond. The morning sun washing everything in pale gold. A long polished table stretched between Lexi and the world she did not belong to. Silver cutlery aligned with military precision. Crystal glasses that caught the light like shards of ice. She stood uncertain at the threshold, her fingers nervously twisting the hem of her shawl. Eleanor sat at the head of the table, regal and poised, her every movement deliberate. She poured tea into a porcelain cup, the faint clink of the spoon echoing through the stillness. Across from her sat him, the man whose nearness both comforted and unsettled Lexi. His expression was calm, unreadable, yet his gaze flicked toward the doorway the moment Lexi appeared, and for a heartbeat, the world seemed to pause. "Good morning," Eleanor said finally, setting her cup down. The words were polite, but laced with authority. Lexi stepped forward, her voice barely steady. "Good morning, ma'am." He gestured lightly toward the seat beside him. "Sit, Lexi." She hesitated, unsure she should, but Eleanor's nod, slow and deliberate, left her no choice. Lexi took her place, acutely aware of the space between them. The scent of coffee, roses, and something sharper, control, hung heavy in the air. For a while, the only sounds were the faint hum of the city beyond the walls and the soft clatter of cutlery. Lexi glanced at the plates laid before her. Fresh fruit sliced with surgical precision, pastries arranged like art, a silver teapot that seemed too beautiful to touch. She felt small here, a trespasser in someone else's perfection. "You found the garden this morning," Eleanor said without looking up. It wasn't a question. Lexi froze, the fork halfway to her lips. "I needed some air." Eleanor's eyes lifted slowly, calm and sharp. "The garden can be deceiving. It appears peaceful, but the roses have thorns. One should know where to step." The words were gentle, but the warning beneath them cut clean. Lexi lowered her gaze. "I'll remember that." He shifted slightly beside her, his jaw tightening. "Mother." Eleanor's hand lifted gracefully, stopping him. "I'm merely offering advice. Our guest should feel welcome, shouldn't she?" He leaned back in his chair, silent. His eyes, however, told another story, one of restraint, of the tension that lived between duty and desire. Lexi reached for her cup, trying to steady herself. The tea was warm, fragrant, grounding. She could feel Eleanor's gaze on her, like sunlight through glass. Too bright, too revealing. "I understand you came from the city," Eleanor continued. "Quite a distance from here." "Yes," Lexi said softly. "It's very different. I can imagine." Eleanor stirred her tea again. "And what is it that you do, Miss Lexi?" Lexi hesitated. The truth, her work at small community library, the simple life she'd built, felt out of place here, like an untuned note in a symphony. "I work with books," she said finally, "mostly organizing archives." "How quaint," Eleanor murmured, smiling faintly. "Books are loyal companions, aren't they? They don't betray you unless you misread them." Lexi didn't know how to respond. She forced a small nod, feeling the weight of every word. He set his cup down with a soft click. "Mother," he said evenly, "you're interrogating her." Eleanor's eyes glinted. "Curiosity, dear. I like to understand the people who enter my home." Her home. The words landed like a stone. Lexi's fingers tightened around her cup. "I didn't mean to stay," she said quietly. "You've both been kind, but I don't want to impose." Eleanor tilted her head. "Impose?" Her tone was almost amused. A young woman caught in the middle of a city incident, suddenly finding herself in a mansion. Some might call that fate. Others might call it opportunity. "Mother." The single word carried warning now, his voice low. But Eleanor only smiled, unbothered. "Relax, darling. I'm simply saying one should know the difference between chance and design. Otherwise, one might misunderstand intentions." Lex's throat tightened. The implication was clear. She was being tested, measured, accused of motives she hadn't even dared to form. She looked at him, seeking reassurance, but his eyes were shadowed, torn between defending her and keeping peace. "I think," Lexi said softly that sometimes life just happens. Not every meeting is planned. Eleanor regarded her for a long moment, then set her spoon down. Perhaps, but in this house, my dear, everything is consequence, even accidents. The air thickened. Lexi lowered her eyes, focusing on the glint of silver on the table. She wished the earth would open beneath her feet and swallow her whole. He leaned slightly toward her, his voice barely a whisper. Don't let her get to you. Lexi glanced up, startled by the quiet kindness in his tone. His gaze held her steady and protective, and something inside her eased just a little. Eleanor noticed. Of course. Nothing escaped her. Tell me. Eleanor said suddenly, what do you think of my son? The question struck like lightning. Lexi froze, color flooding her cheeks. He straightened sharply, his eyes flashing. Mother. Oh, come now. Eleanor said lightly, her smile edged with irony. We're all adults here. I'm curious. You must have an impression of him by now. Lex's voice trembled. He's kind and fair. He helped me when he didn't have to. Kind. Eleanor repeated as though tasting the word. Yes, he's always had that flaw. He exhaled sharply, shaking his head. Enough, Mother. Leonard's expression softened just a fraction. Kindness can be dangerous, my dear, she said, looking at Lexi again. Especially when it's misunderstood. Lexi could barely breathe. She nodded faintly, unsure if agreeing or staying silent would save her. Then, breaking the suffocating stillness, a servant entered quietly and placed a folded newspaper beside Eleanor's plate. She opened it, her eyes scanning the headline, and for a brief instant, Lexi saw a flicker of genuine concern cross her face. Eleanor's gaze darted to her son, then to Lexi. It seems, she said slowly, the city hasn't forgotten last night's chaos. He frowned. What do you mean? Eleanor slid the paper toward him. A report. An unnamed woman seen during the incident. Someone described her. Her eyes lifted meaningfully to Lexi. The world is already asking questions. Lexi felt her blood run cold. Describe me. Eleanor folded her hands, her voice calm, but cutting. So it seems. And that, my dear, is precisely why I warned you. Every presence here carries weight. He stood abruptly, pushing his chair back. I'll handle it. Eleanor looked up at him, unflinching. Be careful how, son. Appearances are everything. He left the table, the tension following him out like smoke. Lexi sat frozen, her pulse pounding. Eleanor's gaze returned to her, steady, assessing, almost pitying. Eat, Eleanor said quietly, rising from her chair. You'll need your strength. This house tests everyone who enters it. Then she turned and walked away, her footsteps soft against marble, leaving Lexi alone at the long, glittering table. The sunlight poured over her untouched plate, and the taste of tea turned bitter on her tongue. Outside the tall windows, the roses swayed in the wind, beautiful, fragile, and edged with thorns. The car cut through the city like a silver blade, its reflection darting across glass towers and rain-dampened roads. He gripped the steering wheel too tightly, his jaw locked, the echo of Eleanor's cold words still vibrating through him. Outside, Legos pulsed with early heat, street vendors shouting, motorbikes weaving, billboards screaming perfection. Yet everything inside him burned colder. Lex's frightened face haunted him. The quiet tremor in her voice when she tried to defend herself replayed over and over. She's not the enemy, he muttered to no one, accelerating past a red light. She's not, but the city was already whispering. Rumors move faster than cars here. By the time he reached Victoria Island, his phone was vibrating nonstop. Messages from his assistant, from board members, from journalists fishing for comment. Something had broken loose online. He pulled over in front of his corporate building, the familiar glass monolith that carried his name, a symbol of power, stability, order. Today, it looked like a mirror cracking in the sun. Security guards snapped to attention as he stepped out, his tall figure, all composure and fury wrapped in one. The receptionist avoided his eyes. The elevator ride to the top floor felt endless, every second stretched by the buzz of notifications still lighting up his screen. At last, the doors opened. Inside his office, The air smelled of tension, faint perfume, and ink. Rebecca sat there, legs crossed elegantly, a thin smile on her lips. "You're early," she said, voice smooth like glass. He froze, pulse tightening. "What are you doing here?" Rebecca rose, brushing an imaginary crease from her cream suit. "Damage control," she said, turning the tablet toward him. On the screen, headlines glared in bold. "Unknown woman caught in late-night mansion scandal." Beneath the title, blurry photos. Lex's face half hidden, his silhouette unmistakable behind her. For a heartbeat, silence filled the room like poison gas. Then he spoke. "Low, dangerous. Where did this come from?" "Online gossip accounts." Rebecca replied softly. "But you know how these things spread. Within hours, it'll be on every business feed. People will talk. Investors will panic." And she tilted her head, finding regret. "Mother will be furious." He slammed his fist against the table. "You did this." Rebecca's eyes widened, but not with fear, with delight. "That a cruel accusation," she whispered, stepping closer. "I would never sabotage you, darling. I'm trying to protect what's ours." "What's ours?" he repeated, a bitter laugh escaping him. "Rebecca, we ended before this even started. Then why does she still have your name on her lips?" Rebecca's tone sharpened, the mask slipping. "That girl, that nobody. Do you have any idea what she's done to your image? To our reputation?" He turned away, staring out the vast window where the city glimmered like shattered diamonds. "She saved my life," he said quietly. Rebecca laughed once, sharp, cruel. "Oh, please. You think she's some angel from the gutter? You think she doesn't know exactly what she's doing? Wake up, darling. Girls like her don't stumble into mansions. They calculate. They charm. They climb." His hands tightened behind his back. "Get out, Rebecca. I'm not your enemy," she whispered, circling closer until her perfume laced the air between them. "But if you keep letting her near you, I will be." The words hung there, a blade wrapped in silk. When she finally left, the office felt colder. He stood motionless for a long time, watching her reflection fade in the window. Somewhere below, the city roared, horns, laughter, the hum of chaos. Yet all he could hear was Lex's voice, soft and unguarded, asking if she had done something wrong. He pressed his palms to his eyes, exhaling. No, she hadn't. But now she was trapped in something far bigger than either of them. His phone buzzed again, this time a call from his legal team. They spoke fast and nervous. "Sir, we're getting calls from the press. Someone's leaked security footage from the mansion gates. You and the woman. I'll handle it." He cut in voice steel. He ended the call, snatched his coat, and walked out. Downstairs, the lobby was already filling with tension, staff pretending not to look, whispers snapping like dry leaves. He pushed through and stepped back into glare of the day. Cameras flashed somewhere distant. He didn't care. He had to get to Lexi. Meanwhile, across the city in a candle-lit penthouse high above the water, Rebecca stood by her floor-to-ceiling window, swirling wine in her glass. Her phone buzzed. "Yes," she said without turning. A voice on the other end, low efficient. "The pictures are trending. Public sympathy split. Some call her brave, others call her a liar." Rebecca smiled faintly. "Perfect. What about the backup plan?" "Keep digging," she said. "Find me something real, or make it look real. I don't care which." She ended the call, gazing out at the skyline. In the reflection, her face was both beautiful and merciless, the kind of face that smiled while breaking lives apart. Below, the waves of Lagos Lagoon shimmered like molten silver, swallowing the last of the sunrise. Back at the mansion, Lexi stood by the window, unaware of the chaos rising beyond the gates. The staff moved around her politely but distant, as if carrying invisible gossip between trays of tea and folded napkins. She touched the edge of her wrist where his hand had brushed hers the night before, a spark, a warmth, and wondered if she had imagined it all. A car screeched into the driveway. She turned sharply, heart pounding. He was back. He climbed out, face shadowed with fury and exhaustion. The front doors opened wide, and for a fleeting second, their eyes met, the world beyond the gates forgotten. But before she could step forward, Eleanor appeared on the stairs. Inside, his mother commanded. Lexi froze, torn between obedience and instinct. He hesitated, then obeyed, brushing past Eleanor with only a brief glance toward Lexi. Something unspoken, heavy, full of promise and danger. Upstairs, Eleanor's voice followed him, sharp as steel. You think you can protect her? The city is already whispering. I know, he said, shutting the study door behind them. And that's why I'm ending it before they destroy her. But deep down, he knew it was already too late. The fire had started. The moment he had let Lexi in, the moment he had defended her. He'd given the world something to feed on and given Rebecca a reason to strike harder. As dusk settled over the city, Rebecca's second message went out. A quiet push through private networks, journalists, social accounts. A single headline prepared for the morning. Billionaire's secret woman. The truth behind the mansion scandal. By the time night fell again, everything would burn, and Lexi, still sitting by the window, watching the garden shimmer with fading light, would have no idea that her innocence had just been weaponized. Night descended slowly over the mansion, washing the marble halls in silver and shadow. The air outside carried the faint hum of the city, but inside everything was still, the kind of silence that didn't soothe, but tightened around the heart. He stood by the tall window of his study, jacket tossed carelessly over the chair, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up. On the desk behind him lay scattered headlines, draft reports, and half-finished whiskey, each one an echo of chaos waiting to break loose. He'd faced boardroom betrayals, corporate wars, and family politics his whole life. Yet tonight, he felt completely defenseless, not because of what the world might think, but because of how she would feel when it did. Lexi. He could still see the way her eyes had widened at breakfast, the tremor in her hands as Eleanor's words sliced through the morning air. She had tried to smile, tried to hide how much it hurt, but he had seen the truth, the fragile courage behind that silence. She wasn't made for this world of power and masks. Yet somehow, she'd walked right into the center of it, and now the walls were closing in. He moved the piano at the edge of the room, his fingers brushing over the keys without pressing them. His mother had once told him that silence could be more powerful than sound. But tonight it only fell heavy. A knock came at the door. "Come in," he said quietly. It was Eleanor's butler, dignified as ever. Madam retired to her quarters. She asked if he'd be joining dinner. "No. Shall I tell the kitchen to no?" The word came sharp at this time. The butler bowed slightly and left. When the door clicked shut, he exhaled and finally let his head fall into his hands. For the first time in years, he didn't know what the right move was. Protecting Lexi meant war with his mother and with Rebecca, but letting her go meant abandoning the only person who had seen him, not as a name or a fortune, but as a man. He thought back to that moment on the terrace, her laughter breaking through his guarded stillness, the warmth of her breath only inches away. He had almost crossed that line, almost kissed her. Now every nerve in his body regretted that he hadn't. The grandfather clock ticked softly, marking the hours he couldn't feel. Midnight approached, carrying with it the faint scent of rain drifting through the open window. He turned toward the balcony. Stepping outside, the air was cool, his shirt clinging lightly to his skin. Down below, the garden shimmered faintly under the moonlight, the same place where she had stood, uncertain and radiant. He could almost see her there, her hair catching the wind, her eyes holding questions she never dared to ask. He whispered into the night, "What are you doing to me, Lexi?" But the wind carried no answer. Back inside, he poured himself another drink and sank into the leather chair. The whiskey burned its way down, but the ache in his chest stayed. Every instinct told him to go to her room to make sure she was all right. But another voice, colder, older, whispered, "Caution! Eleanor will destroy her. Rebecca will tear her apart, and you'll be the one to blame." He clenched his jaw, pressing the glass to his lips again. Suddenly, his phone lit up. A message. "Rebecca, I hope you're not losing sleep over a mistake. Darling, tomorrow we'll fix everything. Trust me." He stared at the screen until the words blurred. Then he deleted the message. A mistake. That's what Rebecca called Lexi. But to him, she wasn't a mistake. She was the only thing that felt real in months of pretense. He stood again, pacing the length of the study. His reflection followed him in the window, a man caught between two lives. To one side, the polished heir to a dynasty. To the other, a man on the edge of something he didn't fully understand. Down the hall, faint footsteps echoed. His head turned. Lexi. She was walking past quietly, barefoot, a shawl wrapped around her shoulders. For a heartbeat, he thought of calling out, of breaking the silence. But he didn't. Instead, he watched as she paused near the gallery window, gazing out at the storm clouds gathering above the city. Her silhouette looked small against the vastness of the mansion. He wanted to go to her to tell her that everything would be fine, that she didn't have to face this alone. But lies came too easily in this house, and promises too often broke. He turned away, fist tightening at his sides. Moments later, the thunder rolled in, slow, distant. He crossed the drawer, pulling out an old photo. His father standing beside a much younger version of himself. Behind them, Eleanor's stern smile. You were born to lead, his father had said once. And leadership means sacrifice. He hadn't realized back then that sometimes the sacrifice was your own peace. The rain started, tapping gently against the windows. He sank back into the chair, the photo still in his hand. For the first time, the mansion felt like a cage. Beautiful, gilded, but suffocating. Meanwhile, in her room down the corridor, Lexi sat by her window, watching the same rain. She didn't know he was awake. Didn't know he could almost sense her thoughts. The way her heart trembled between gratitude and fear. In another life, she thought maybe this could have been simple. She touched her necklace absently, a small locket she had since childhood, and whispered a prayer she couldn't finish. In the study, he whispered too, the same name echoing under his breath. Lexi. Hours passed. The rain softened, but neither of them slept. By dawn, the sky began to pale, gray light filtering through the storm clouds. He finally rose, setting the untouched glass aside. His reflection in the mirror looked older, heavier. The decision had been made somewhere between midnight and dawn, though he hadn't spoken aloud. He would protect her, even if it meant losing everything else. He pulled on his coat and stepped quietly into the corridor. The mansion was silent, still dreaming. As he passed her door, he paused, hand hovering near the handle. Then slowly, he let it fall and walked away. Downstairs, the world was already stirring. The staff beginning their routines, the city beyond the gates waking up, and far away, in a high-rise office overlooking the lagoon, Rebecca smiled at her reflection in a glass of water as she prepared the morning's headlines. Morning light crept softly into the mansion, pale and gold through the tall windows. The rain had stopped some time before dawn, leaving behind a faint earthy scent that clung to the air. Birds stirred in the garden, their songs hesitant, as though the world itself sensed the tension still hanging over the house. He was already awake, dressed in a crisp shirt, but without the armor of his usual composure. He looked tired, not from lack of sleep, but from the weight of too many thoughts pressing against his chest. The decision he had made in the silent hours before dawn still pulsed through him. He would protect her, no matter what came next. He glanced at the clock, nearly 8. Eleanor would be awake soon, and with her questions, expectations, and control. He didn't want Lexi to face any of that. Not yet. So before the house fully woke, he walked toward the smaller breakfast room, the one overlooking the east garden. It wasn't grand or intimidating like the main dining hall. This one had warm sunlight and a faint smell of jasmine from the window ledge. He told the butler quietly, "Set the table for 2, something light, tea, fruit, and please don't inform Madame Eleanor." The butler gave a knowing nod and disappeared. Minutes later, he stood by the window, watching the morning light scatter across the dew-soaked leaves. He rehearsed what he might say, how he could reassure her, how he could make her believe she was safe. But words felt fragile, like glass that could shatter under the wrong tone. Then he heard the faintest sound, soft footsteps in the hallway. Lexi appeared hesitantly in the doorway, her hair loose over her shoulders, a light robe wrapped around her. She looked both rested and restless, as if she had dreamed things too vivid to escape. He turned, surprised but relieved. "You're awake early." "I couldn't sleep," she said, her voice small, uncertain. He gestured toward the table. Join me before the day gets loud. She hesitated, glancing around. Won't your mother? She doesn't need to know everything that happens in this house. His tone was gentle but firm, the kind that invited trust. Slowly, she stepped inside, the morning light catching the shimmer of her eyes. The butler entered quietly with a tray, tea, fresh fruit, a small plate of toast, then retreated without a word. They sat opposite each other, a long, delicate silence stretching between them. Outside, the sunlight touched her face, softening the tension around her mouth. I owe you an apology, he said finally, stirring his tea without drinking it. She looked up, startled. For what? For yesterday. For not stopping it sooner. His voice was steady, but there was regret buried in every syllable. My mother can be sharp. I should have warned you. Lexi shook her head. You don't have to apologize. I shouldn't have been here in the first place. He frowned. You were helping me. That doesn't deserve shame. I wasn't supposed to stay, she said quietly. I know how it must look. Her words twisted something inside him that she felt like an intruder in a space where she'd done nothing wrong. He leaned forward slightly, his gaze holding hers. Lexi, what it looks like doesn't matter to me. Her breath caught, and for a second, neither moved. She smiled faintly, trying to diffuse attention. You say that now, but people talk. I've heard whispers already about the city, about your life. I don't want to be the reason anyone. You're not, he interrupted, voice low, certain. You're the reason I still remember what peace feels like. Her eyes widened, a soft blush rising to her cheeks. You shouldn't say things like that. Why? Because they sound like promises, she said, her tone almost a whisper. He exhaled, a hint of a smile playing at his lips. Maybe they are. Silence again, but it wasn't empty. It was alive, charged, a heartbeat between two people who understood that something fragile yet powerful was growing between them. She lowered her gaze to the teacup, tracing its rim absently. I still don't understand why you're being so kind to me. He leaned back, watching her. Maybe because kindness isn't something I get to practice often. Maybe because you remind me that I'm still capable of it. Lexi didn't respond, but her throat tightened. For the first time since she'd entered the mansion, she didn't feel like a guest. She felt like someone seen. Someone noticed. Outside, the sunlight grew stronger, breaking through the clouds. A small breeze rustled the curtains, brushing across her hair. Instinctively, he reached forward, tucking a loose strand behind her ear. His fingers lingered for a fraction of a second too long. Her eyes met his, startled, but not pulling away. The air thickened, their breaths shallow. Don't look at me like that, she murmured. Like what? Like I'm someone you shouldn't want. He froze, caught between restraint and desire. Maybe I don't have a choice. A pause. Then she laughed softly. Nervous, beautiful. You really shouldn't say that. Probably not, he agreed quietly. But I meant it. They both sat back, the spell of the moment breaking, but not gone. Somewhere down the hall, faint voices echoed, servants beginning their morning routines, doors opening and closing. The world was waking up again, reminding them that time still moved forward whether they wanted it to or not. She reached for her tea, trying to hide the tremble in her hand. What happens now? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stared out the window where the first rays of full sunlight touched the garden pond. Whatever happens, he said finally, I won't let them hurt you. But they already are, she whispered, her voice trembling. I can feel it. Even the walls here listen. His gaze flicked back to her, protective, intent, then let them listen. For a heartbeat, she looked at him, unsure whether to believe or fear the promise in his tone. Then she nodded slightly, trying to smile again, though her eyes were glistening. He wanted to reach for her hand, to pull her into something steady and safe. But before he could, footsteps approached down the corridor. Eleanor's voice floated, sharp and unmistakable, speaking to someone about newspaper headlines and calls from Rebecca. He stood abruptly, his jaw tightening. Go back to your room, he said softly, almost regretful. Please, just for now. She understood instantly, the warning beneath the words. She rose, clutching her shawl, her eyes searching his one last time. Will you be okay? He almost smiled. That depends on how bad the news is. She turned to leave but paused in the doorway. Thank you for breakfast, he nodded. Thank you for staying. Then she was gone, and the silence returned sharper this time. A moment later, Eleanor swept into the room, her eyes like ice. You've seen the headlines. He didn't answer. They're everywhere, she continued coldly. Your name? Her picture. It's begun. He closed his eyes, the echo of Lexi's soft voice still in his ears. I know, and as Eleanor's words sharpened into commands, all he could think of was the fragile calm of that breakfast. The sunlight, her laughter, the way she'd said, You shouldn't say that, before the storm came crashing down, because deep down he already knew by nightfall everything would break. The first rays of morning sunlight crept across the glass walls of Rebecca's penthouse, shimmering against the sleek black marble like golden serpents. She stood barefoot on the balcony, a silk robe loosely knotted around her waist, holding a crystal glass of champagne that caught the light with a wicked sparkle. Below her, the city of Lagos pulsed awake, horns, voices, and distant echoes of the day's coming chaos. Her lips curved slowly, languidly. The game had begun. The television inside her living room murmured softly, a morning news anchor's tone growing more animated by the minute. The image on the screen shifted to Lex's face, innocent, confused, caught mid-step in a photo outside the mansion gates. Billionaire heir's secret mistress. The headline blazed across the lower third in red. Another image followed. Lexi at the gala, her hand brushing his arm, her eyes glowing with admiration. Perfectly timed, perfectly misleading. Rebecca's fingers traced the rim of her glass, her reflection in the window smiling back with that dangerous serenity only power can grant. They'll never see her as innocent again, she thought. They'll tear her apart before she even opens her mouth. Behind her, her phone buzzed on the marble counter, a secure message from the journalist she'd bought months ago. Delivered, trending within minutes. Hashtag mansion mistress already viral. She typed back a single word. Good. Then she set the phone down, walked toward the mirror, and studied herself. Flawless, poised, radiant, even in vengeance. But beneath the calm, something else flickered. A memory. His hand once in hers. That quiet smile that used to disarm her. The way he looked at her before everything shattered. For a brief, dangerous second, the icy armor cracked and warmth seeped through. Rebecca closed her eyes, exhaling slowly. You made me feel alive, she whispered almost tenderly. And for that, I'll make sure you never forget me. She poured another glass, walked back to the balcony, and leaned over the railing as Legos moved beneath her like a restless beast. Her mind was a maze, each corner holding a plan, each emotion carefully dissected. Yet under all that precision lived something raw and romantic, twisted by betrayal. She didn't just want to destroy Lexi. She wanted him to miss her while watching everything fall apart. She imagined him now, that look of fury and disbelief as he saw the news. She could almost hear his voice echoing her name in disbelief. Rebecca, what have you done? Her smile deepened. Everything you forced me to, she murmured into the wind. The city around her was a symphony of sound, the chatter of vendors, the buzz of traffic, the thrum of phones lighting up with scandal. On another building's rooftop, a drone hovered, her hired photographer capturing her morning poise, ready to leak to lifestyle blogs later. A soft, curated image of calm while the world burned under her touch. Her assistant entered quietly, holding a tablet. Ma'am, the stories everywhere channels, gossip blogs, even international feeds. Rebecca didn't turn. And him. He's left the mansion. Straight to the office. They say he looked angry. Good. She sipped the champagne again, eyes glinting. Anger keeps him thinking of me. The assistant hesitated, then spoke softly. You still care for him, don't you? Rebecca's gaze hardened for a heartbeat, then softened again, but dangerously so. Care. She walked closer, each step slow, deliberate. Love and hate are twins, Ada. One always survives the other. Her hand brushed the assistant's cheek briefly, a gesture that was part affection, part warning, and I never let love die quietly. The assistant lowered her eyes, murmured an apology, and slipped out. The door clicked shut, leaving Rebecca alone with her ghosts. She walked to the piano in the corner, its black surface gleaming, and pressed a single key. Soft, melancholic. The sound lingered in the silence. "Do you remember, darling," she whispered to the emptiness, "how we used to dance here long before she appeared?" Her mind drifted back to candlelight dinners. His laughter, the slow waltz they'd shared under that same Legos moon, the scent of his cologne, the warmth of his breath on her neck, the promise in his voice. For a fleeting second, her body remembered him, and her heart betrayed her revenge. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for the glass again. "No," she hissed. "Not again." She straightened, regaining her perfect composure. He chose her. Let him watch her drown. Across town, the story had already become a firestorm. News outlets speculated, influencers dissected, and paparazzi swarmed the mansion gates. Lex's name was everywhere, painted with scandal, with betrayal. Rebecca's lips curved at thought of it all, but deep inside she felt a faint ache of satisfaction that wasn't as sweet as she'd imagined. She turned her gaze toward the skyline, watching the clouds shift above the Atlantic. A storm was coming, literal and emotional. "Soon," she whispered. "They'll both understand." Her phone buzzed again. A new message from private number text. "You went too far this time. Rebecca." Her pulse quickened. She knew that tone. He'd finally broken his silence. She smiled faintly and typed back, "You started this war when you lied to me. I'm just finishing it." She stared at the screen for a long moment before tossing the phone onto the couch, her robe sliding slightly off her shoulder. The air brushed her skin like a lover's whisper. She closed her eyes and imagined him storming toward her penthouse, fury blazing, that same fire she once loved. And in that fantasy, the line between hate and desire blurred completely. She imagined the confrontation. Comment for Part 4.